Hello, I'm Anthony. Today we're going to do a deep dive on the tempo track. I've recorded this acoustic guitar part in and I want to set a click track to it so that I can play other stuff in and be able to quantize to the original guitar part exactly as played. If you enjoyed this video, please check out my other content. I do tons of Cubase related stuff, supported by my awesome patrons and YouTube channel members. Check out the links below. Now there's a couple of ways that we can go about this. The first approach that I'm going to show you is the hack, the hammer to crack an egg solution, but it works really well and it's really simple. What I'm going to do, or what I've already done actually, is laid down a tap-based drum line. I've got a cowbell line that I've played behind that follows the rhythmic structure of the guitar. It's much easier for Cubase to perform processing on that than it is to try to analyze the guitar line. Firstly, let's just hear the guitar on its own. I'll show you some of the tempo variances that we're talking about. So I'm slowing down here and off we go. Pause, and then off we go. This is really slow. You can see we've got this cowbell line. So A sharp 2 is the note that I've used, and that's the cowbell tip. You can also see I've just inserted a note right at the beginning of the song. We'll need that shortly, but let's just hear the cowbell tip that I manually tapped in for the entire 2.5 minutes of the piece to accompany the guitar line. So it's taking the part of a click track, but it's been played in by me. Now, in addition to the 2.5 minutes it took me to physically play that, I did need to go in and do a little bit of editing where I didn't get the timing absolutely perfect as I'm playing all of these notes, hitting those tempos, every single beat for 2.5 minutes or 4 minutes, however long your song is. You're going to make a couple of mistakes. So I locked the editing screens together and then played the entire thing back, and you can see the transients of the guitars and just did a little bit of visual correction to move these notes where I wanted them to be. So it took me about 20 minutes to set this track up, but once it's there, it then makes the process of creating the tempo track very straightforward indeed. This is how we do it. So we need to select the MIDI track we're talking about in the project editor. Then in the lower window, I want to select all the notes. I want to make sure that I'm in linear time-based mode. I don't want this track following the tempo track. I want it to drive the tempo track. So you make sure in your inspector panel here, it says toggle time-based between music and linear. You want it in linear mode, and that's it, we're good to go. So now I can go into MIDI, functions, merge tempo from tapping. I played a cowbell hit in every single beat, so I want the tapping set to quarter. Begin at bar start. There's a single note right at the very beginning of the song just to help it orient its timing. Okay, now that's actually done it. Doesn't look like it's done anything, but it has. In order to see the difference, I need to engage the tempo track. That's in the transport bar, activate tempo track. And when I click this, watch what happens to the drum notes. They all snap to these bars. Now at the moment, the time signature is 1/4. Let's go to the beginning of the song. There we are. So the time signature is 1/4, which means that each beat represents an entire bar. And we're going to leave it like that for now. I'm not going to worry about the time signature at all. I just want to get the beat structure of the piece correct. And so now this drum line has imposed itself on the tempo track. And the tempo track is now driving off those manual hits that I put in. We can't see the tempo track at the moment, but that's perfectly easy to add. It does exist, it's just not visible. So I need to add a tempo track, and it says this type of track can only be added once. And here it is. So each one of these little squares represents a change of tempo. and the song is constantly adjusting itself to ensure that each one of these beats is played in the right amount of time. What I'm going to do now is mute the drum track and turn the click track on instead. And now you'll hear Cubase's click track follows along with the guitar line. And of course, every single one of these clicks exactly correlates to the original cowbell hits. So it's exactly the same effect. It's just that that's now being driven from Cubase, not from my manually played drum track. So this is option one. If you're prepared to put that time in at the outset, a few minutes to manually play in the rhythm, maybe 10, 20 minutes just adjusting some of those notes that you might not have played in perfectly, taking account of your guitar transients, you can see all of this stuff. It's really easy to just pick the notes up and move them wherever they need to be. You are good to go. And this is I think, actually the fastest way to do it. I'm going to show you the tempo detection mode as well. That has strengths and weaknesses, but this is really pretty good. Let's take the alternative approach instead, where we get Cubase to do everything. So now we're not going to use that drum track at all. I'm going to take all of the tempo decisions off the original guitar audio. Now, by executing this process, I'm going to throw away all of the other stuff. So we don't need to delete the tempo track. It's going to recalculate everything from scratch. I need to select the audio event. You can see that the entire song is one single audio event. I strongly recommend that however you get to this stage, whether you bounce or render your track, get to the point where the audio that you've got is exactly how you want it and it's a single event. Then I'm going to select Project, Tempo Detection, and we get this tiny little tempo detection panel. I'm not going to worry about any of these options. I'm literally just going to click Go, this big Analyze button. Cubase is telling us here that there's quite a big range of tempos. You can see multiple tempos were detected. Yeah, well, that's the whole point. Thanks very much. So we have this tempo track. It's never going to be perfect. Pretty much if you take your tempo off audio, there are going to be problems with it. We're going to fix those, don't worry. But just as a starting point, let's see what it sounds like. It's not a very auspicious start. It doesn't sound particularly good here, does it? It's because my tempo is so variable in that intro section. It's quite difficult to process. You'll hear it improve shortly. So these are clearly articulated notes, played at a pretty consistent tempo. And then once again, because I had this long, slow note where it dragged out and slowed down physically, you know, I knew I was slowing down as I was playing it. Cubase just loses its way. This note is now in the middle of nowhere and we've gone wrong again. So tempo detection has its strengths and weaknesses depending on how consistent and strong the rhythm is of the stuff that's underlying the tempo detection. And we need to fix all of that. You know, we don't want all of those flaws. So now I'm going to go through this audio file, and wherever Cubase gets it wrong, I'm going to fix it. Now this is the secret magic ingredient. Keep the tempo detection panel open. What this means is that as we auto-correct, I'm going to go in and start manually fixing stuff in a minute. This white button that's indicating direction of reanalysis when using the time warp tool, it basically means every time I click in this screen, do anything to fix the tempo, it's going to recalculate everything to the right-hand side. That means if it previously got something right, it's going to get it right again, but it's going to do it in a new context with the stuff previously that I've just fixed. Easier to show you than talk about it. Let's just get on with it. Right out of the gate, we've got a problem. Here's the guitar transient. I want that to be on a bar. Don't forget, we're still in 1/4 time here, so every single beat is a bar. I want every single transient, that tiny little point there, and there's one, and here's one, and here's one. For the most part, these dotted lines are where Cubase thinks the transients are, and it's usually right, not always, but usually. I'm going to pick this up, and I'm dragging, see the black line, the vertical line? I'm going to drag that to where the beginning of the note actually is, and then I'm just going to let go. And now you saw stuff to the right-hand side get reprocessed. This point is now correctly set as the first beat of the song. The next beat I'm perfectly happy with, that's fine. And now I'm just clicking and dragging to the left or right to make these vertical lines that represent the current bar be in line with the transient. As I do so, every single time I let go of the mouse, it recalculates everything to the right. Now, take an account of what you're actually seeing. These tempo changes are going to help you visually identify when you do something wrong. You might get a very big jump of tempo or a very big drop when the song doesn't actually represent that as a reality. So you've got to use some common sense and your eyes as you're doing this. But to a large extent, it's really just manually correcting the things that Cubase didn't quite get right first time. And sometimes it makes an absolute mess of it, and you've got to really help it out with a particular section. This beginning part of the song, it really didn't do very well at all. So I'm manually correcting most of the notes. And here we are up to bar 9. So there's basically the first two kind of 4/4 bars. Let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, can you see all of this stuff that I'm doing with the mouse? We've got that little metronome symbol. That's because we're still in tempo detection mode. So in the project editor, I'm in audio warp mode, and I'm able to drag these tempo changes to where I want them to be at the beginning of each of the transients of the guitar, and everything works. Quick check of that. Now then, this section is tricky. It's a long note, so it's really difficult for us. There are no transients to see. So how do we keep track of where the tempo is? Also, I know audibly that it slows down. I don't even care how many beats are in this note. I just played it the length that I wanted to. It felt right, and then I started the next part of the song. So there's no formal structure to this at all. What that means is that tempo detection has no hope of getting this right, and so we're going to have to do some manual correction on it. What I like to do with sections like this is I'm just going to control mouse wheel, and I'm going to control click in the locator bar, and then alt click to set up my right locator point. So I've now created a cycle around the stuff, the part of the song that I'm interested in hearing. I can now zoom to those locator points and then jump to the beginning of that cycle point and listen to this over and over again to kind of get a feel of what I want my tempo map to do. So I definitely want there to be a beat at the beginning of this transient here, but I'm going to worry about that later. The first thing to do is to get this tempo slowdown fixed. Now we've got way too many beats here. There's no way that the song continues at this BPM rate. It even increases a little bit. That's just wrong. But representing that tempo slowdown using the audio warp tool is a bit tricky. It can be done, and I'll show you how. Every time I pick one of these lines up, what it basically does is varies the tempos to the left and right of that line. You can see exactly what's happening. Now I know that there's no way the song is speeding up at this point. So I can drag these lines down so that the song's getting slower and slower. And each time I do, it's just had to recalculate what its locator points were there and kind of threw me out. So I basically just zoom back to the locators and everything's fixed again. But one by one, I'm dragging these things down. If a tempo node disappears off the top of the screen, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can change the range over which the BPM is scrolling. So you can see we're between 60 and 180 here. I could turn that into 300 and I would have a bigger range to view. But you can also just sort of ignore what it's doing and you carry on doing your own thing. And eventually we're going to get to the stage where we've dragged it down. I'm not even listening to the song at this point. I'm just doing it kind of by intuition. We've got to the stage where the final node that we're about to drag to gets us to the point where we have a bar line exactly on the guitar transient. That was the end goal. How we got there, we don't particularly care about. Let's hear what that sounds like in the context of the click track. Not bad. If I really wanted to be finicky, I could go back into each one of these step downs and make them smoother. Basically make this jump not quite so intense, but it can end up being more trouble than it's worth. Generally, once I'm more or less in the ballpark, I'm kind of content to call it done. That's fine. Having done all of that editing and absolutely not caring what happens after what's now bar 22, we just don't care because the tempo detection panel is still open, we're still in detection mode. It's recalculating the entire song every single time we perform one of these operations. So only now am I interested in what's going on at bar 22. Okay, got something a little bit wrong here, but for a large part of the time there, I was able to just let it get on with it. That was fine. Let's do some little manual corrections. So I'm going to set my left locator there and my right locator here. And it's just a case of having a working zone that gives me a good visible view of what's going on the screen, and then I can just press 1 to jump back to the left locator whenever I want and listen to it again. So this is definitely wrong. This is a tempo change in the middle of a little kind of arpeggio run. I'm just going to leave that there, it's fine. But this I need to fix. And then immediately the tempo detection thing says, oh, right, that's what you're doing, understood, and then everything else snaps back in place. There's another one of these long slowdowns. Okay, so this time I'm going to show you an alternate method of doing the same job. Same kind of thing. Here's the new transient that I'm definitely going to want a bar marker to be on. But all of this stuff up to and including it is the troublesome zone. Another way that you can do it though is to come out of tempo detection mode, basically abandon it. If I change to any other tool type, I'm going to choose my scissors. Cubase will say, hang on a minute, if you do that, you're no longer in warp tool mode and I'm going to stop my audio detection. Is that really what you want to do? So yeah, well, I'm happy, thanks very much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the event exactly right at the beginning of that transient. Done. Now that I've escaped warp tool mode, I've got all of the functions of the application available to me. This transient here is absolutely correct and I'm perfectly happy with it. But now that I'm in regular object selection mode, I can pick up these tempo blocks and just drag them down. I'm actually going to undo that because I should have put it in grid mode first, and that'll make it stick to the white line. And then I'm going to do that completely arbitrary thing that I did earlier. Just get the song to be slower and slower and slower. But now I've got this problem where the transient is no longer on a bar marker. Well, I'm going to make some arbitrary decisions for the purpose of the demonstration. I'll just show you how easy this stuff is to do. I'm going to delete 2 of those tempo nodes. These are not bar markers, they're just changes of tempo. It's entirely up to us how often our tempo changes. Let's say over the course of this note, I want the tempo to change twice. Pick this up and move it over there. Let's put this smack in the middle of a bar just to show you how completely arbitrary this stuff is. Make this a bit slower. And now what I want to do is move this note up and down in tempo. Put this one up actually. until my transient, my guitar transient here, ends up back on a bar marker. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like. Okay, perfectly natural slowdown of tempo. We didn't need all of those intermediate stages. We didn't need the audio tool to do it. We can just pick those tempo markers up and move them wherever we want. Now here we are with this note on bar 53. I'm going to select this event. Every time you do tempo detection, it's up to you to decide which events you use. I've only selected everything from bar 53 onwards, so this is the stuff that's going to get reanalyzed. All of the notes beforehand and all of the tempos we've previously calculated are going to be left completely alone. Let's go back into tempo detection, click Analyze again, and we're away. And now we can begin reanalyzing from this point onwards. Tempo detection panel's open, we're in audio detection mode, all of the edits we make are going to be done in real time. So it's a completely context-oriented process. I'm letting the song run while it sounds good. While the tempo detection that Cubase has done is fine, I'm leaving it alone. And as soon as I think, oh no, got another one of those slowdown sections, it's got this wrong, step in and manually correct it. Here I am right at the end of the song. I've just finished all my processing. Just show you this final section where, as the song winds down, dramatic drop in tempo. And then all of these tempo points at the end are all completely pointless. So now I can come out of tempo mode, change to my object selection tool, zoom out, and now all of this mass of data is all unnecessary. Delete them all. Drag this final tempo node back down to the speed that I actually want it to be. No more data to be had at the end of the song, so it doesn't matter what the final resting tempo is. Okay, so we've finished. That's the entire song with the tempo map, and here are the dramatic slowdowns that you can see really plummeting down into nothingness. That's totally fine. That's the whole point of it being an organic performance. There's no way Cubase was going to figure that out for itself. What we need to do now is figure out the time signature. Again, I won't do the entire song, I'll just show you the principles. It's really straightforward. Go to the beginning. So we start in 1/4. We've done everything processing by the beat. Really easy to do. Can't recommend that highly enough. But obviously the song starts here and it's in 4/4. So let's create ourselves a time signature mark at bar 2. And now suddenly everything snaps into 4/4. It's literally that straightforward. Now we do need to listen to the whole of the song because there were sections where I stretched out so far I'm not completely sure I actually began on a bar. So I'll have a quick look through the song and see if there's any of those that I can point out. Okay, here's one. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to count down. It's a really difficult song to put a signature to, actually, because a lot of it is counted in 3-3-2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So I'm basically treating it as 4/4, but it doesn't have the feeling of a 4/4 song. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And with such dramatic tempo changes as well, a lot of this is very arbitrary. But I'm going to add a 3/4 there. And then back to 4/4. 'Leave it as 4/4, it works. So I've just been through the whole song, put in those time signature changes in. You can see them in the top bar. Everything from 3/4 up to 6/4, depending on how many beats were in that thing, how far I stretched it, how many times I felt there was a beat. It's a really organic process, particularly in something with such dramatic tempo changes, a lot of this is really how do you feel the tempo wants to go. Anyway, I'm going to let this run now for the 2.5 minutes of the track, and we'll hear the tempo changes and the time signature as well. Hope you enjoyed that. Please hit the like button if you did. Thanks very much for watching.